I have to say, I was both excited and nervous to be interviewing my old emeritus professor, David Mckie. I say old, he calls himself that, but he also provided me with a real education some considerable time ago. And though he's kind of retired, I suspect he'll never stop teaching. I have so much time and admiration for David because of who he is, what he stands for, and how he demonstrates leadership through caring in all aspects of life, not just when he's teaching at university or consulting in organizations across the globe. As you will hopefully know by now, if you've seen other episodes, this segment of the podcast is all about the wisdom worth sharing. At the end of every interview, I look back as part of the editing process and discover some of the gems that came out during the conversation and summarize them here. The title of this episode is Give More Than You Receive. This is David's philosophy, and as he relayed to us in one of his many stories throughout this interview, when he told someone about that, they pointed out he'd probably never been successful at it. And they were right. No matter how hard he's tried to give, he's always received back, and then some. He very graciously stated that the interview process had provided him with more value than he'd given by being a willing victim on this podcast. I'm not sure how true that is, but that says a lot about David's outlook on life. He always seems to find the value or the positive in something. But maybe that's because he is always looking for that. When we're operating on autopilot, we see what we expect to see, even if that is an unconscious expectation based on our mindset, mood, and previous experiences. If that's set to the negative, the reasons why we're always giving and not receiving, the world's against me type of attitude, then that will be reinforced by our own confirmation bias. We will see what we need to see in order to prove ourselves right. That's what our brain is programmed to do for us, which is also why it's difficult, often, to see other people's perspectives. However, if we take a second and look and ask ourselves, what can I take from this? Or what are you here to teach me? We might just find some gold, as David often does. You'll notice that what he's been receiving isn't necessarily obvious, tangible things. Instead, it's insight, life lessons, and knowledge, which he then considers how he can apply to his own life and situations and that of others. And that's wisdom. Turning knowledge, which sometimes you need to go and seek out, into action that creates a benefit in some way. There were so many gems that David provided in this interview. I cannot possibly go over them in detail here. So instead, I'm going to do something different, something I haven't done before, and that is try and piece some of those gems together to capture David's approach to and philosophy on leadership. So please bear with me. As David said, there are more bad leaders than good out there, and they exist because of bad cultures. Leaders are always outnumbered, and if we have what he calls leaderful organizations, the right people would step up at the right times, and bad leaders couldn't survive. Growing leaders takes growing leaders. In other words, we cannot stop learning and growing ourselves as leaders as we seek to grow future leaders around us. That includes learning from those we seek to grow as leaders. As you'll recall, David talked about his willingness and, in fact, need to learn from his students. It was a two-way thing. Where we have poor leadership, leaders who feel the need to have all the answers, well, that's not the kind of leadership we actually need. We must obtain the opinions of the team around us so that we can make the best possible decisions. And as David said, people don't resist their own ideas, so he suggested getting them involved in co-creating strategy. And I agree with this. There's ownership and accountability in that, which usually means better uptake of new ideas and initiatives. The use of storytelling was quite key. But these stories need to be the stories we need to tell, not the stories we want to tell, as this helps leaders to be vulnerable. Leadership is a way of being. You need to be good, and do so with spirit and energy. David believes we just need to ensure we have good people as leaders. The rest they can learn. Good people care, which clearly David does. He talked about responding to every human who is open in front of him. He tries to open his heart to them if they're willing to open theirs. Rather than be a teacher, David sees himself as a facilitator or a creator of conditions conducive to people flourishing, or as he also termed it, fostering transformation. Again, this is absolutely the role of a leader. If you've not yet watched the whole of the interview, I recommend doing so. And please pass this on to anyone that you know who may have an interest in leadership. There may be leaders in your part of the world who could benefit from David's wisdom, if you get my drift. So send them a link and see what happens. If you have watched it, hopefully you've been able to take many insights away that you can apply to some aspect of your life, work, and legacy. Use it. Share it with others. As I always say, sharing is like teaching, and teaching helps us retain what we've learned and commit to change, which is necessary if we are to enhance our life's work. I hope you are happy, safe, and successful in all that you do. And remember, live a life that is a story worth retelling. I'm Steve Worsley, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Life's Work, the podcast all about wisdom worth sharing.